welcome back to the welcome back to the podcast, Public Figures. It's me, Rob Jabaz, and with me is my esteemed co-host,
Johnny.
Very good. Today we're talking about films as usual. We found out that the Honora episode did pretty well, and what that leads me to believe is that if you know what the film is, people are more likely to come and listen to the podcast. So we decided, instead of doing a new film, because there aren't that many good new ones, we would do something that everyone would probably know. Not a film, but a director, Mr. Paul Verhoeven. And Johnny, what are some films that Paul Verhoeven is most known for?
Robert, there's Spedders.
No, no one knows about that film.
Okay, then there's Hollow Man. Why don't you tell us about Hollow Man?
No, nobody knows about Hollow Man. What are the
RoboCop is
there we go.
His American classic.
Yeah, there's no shortage of YouTube videos on RoboCop. You know, if you make a video on YouTube and it's about RoboCop, you can be guaranteed that there'll be a lot of people who are overweight and bearded and in their early 40s who will want to watch the video about fucking RoboCop. And what's another one? Of course, Total Recall with our friend
Basic Instinct.
Arnold Schwarzenegger. Well, I'm thinking of the science fiction ones. The sex ones aren't really like they are beloved by a certain crowd of people, but ultimately it's like RoboCop, Total Recall, and Starship Troopers are like the ones that when people think Verhoeven, they think of those three. And then, of course, as you were saying, not striptease. What's the other one called? Showgirls. And Basic Instinct are the other ones that people know. And then the last American film that he made was Hollow Man, a film that I have a lot to say about, but I won't say anything about today. Going back, we got Spetters, as you already mentioned, Turkish Delight, and The Fourth Man. But there's and also Flesh and Blood is one. That's a really cool one. Are we talking about any of these films today? Of course not. We're not talking about any of these films because
not any of the ones that you just mentioned. No,
none of them. We're not talking about any of these films. We are actually today talking about a film that probably nobody wants to hear about at all, and it's a film called Benedetta. Mm-hmm. And it's from the year 2021, and people call it a nunsploitation film. I don't know that it is. Maybe it is. I'm not sure what defines a nunsploitation film. What defines a nunsploitation film, Johnny?
It's a movie about nuns, and it's I think has to have some kind of like sexual content to it. And I think that's about it.
So in that case, Benedetta is a nunsploitation film. I guess it capitalizes on kind of the sort of fetishization of nuns.
Like conversely, like that. What's that movie with Meryl Streep where she's the nun and Philip Seymour Hoffman is the Doubt? Yeah, he's like a priest with long fingernails. Like that, even though it's loaded with nuns, I wouldn't say that was like nunsploitation simply because it's not. It doesn't have that kind of lascivious sexual element to it.
Ooh, lascivious! I love that word. When someone says that word, I just imagine like a very thin Italian man gyrating in front of me.
Fernando
Lascivious, here to pleasure you. So I pop a rod. But anyways, nice. Speaking of popping rods, let's talk about Benedetta. I rewatched this last night. This was a movie that was kind of playing when I was going around showing the sadness. This was also a film that was playing kind of like at festivals when I was going around. So I actually wanted to see it then, but I kept waiting too long and not being able to get tickets. It kept selling out. Everyone wanted to see the new Paul Verhoeven joint because this is the first. I think this is the first film that he made since The Black Book.
That sounds right, I guess.
Yeah. Did you ever see The Black Book?
Although, did L come out before or after Benedetta? When did L come out?
Oh, fuck, you're totally right. My bad. Okay, so L was the first film that he made after The Black Book.
Okay.
Yeah. We could talk a little bit about L.
I've not seen L, so I can't.
Oh, you haven't seen L? Fuck, that's a really good movie.
Yeah. I wanted to check it out.
Starring Huppert.
Isabelle Huppert.
Isabelle Huppert, yeah. In almost like, I don't know, like I guess we won't really talk about it too much, mostly just because I don't want to spoil it for you, and also because, I mean, one of the most interesting things about L for me is the occupation of the titular character. L, is her name L in the film? Maybe, but
Yeah.
oh, sorry about that.
And I spoiled it. Now I know what her name is.
Yeah. She's a video game designer.
I didn't know her name was Elle.
Yeah, her job is a video game designer in the film.
No.
So there's this big element of like of the process of designing like a modern video game in the film, which is extremely interesting. Just for Paul Verhoeven to be like tackling something like that, but it feels pretty realistic. Anyways, we're moving on from L now. We're talking about Ben. It sucks that you haven't seen L. It seems like you should have seen that. Seems right up your alley. Isabelle Huppert.
I'm going to see it. I mean, I got responsibilities, man.
Yeah.
I'm too busy watching Sergeant Kabuki, man.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's got Isabelle Huppert in it. It's directed by Paul Verhoeven. It's
two of my favorites.
It's in French.
3 of my favorites.
You love French movies. But Benedetta, I don't know. I find this movie kind of difficult to kind of get through. I think it has to do with just kind of maybe just the setting, like literally the setting of it. Like it takes place pretty much all within the walls of a convent, and I find when movies kind of like jump through, have a variety of locations, or even like within a location, like different parts of that location, you have an opportunity to change kind of the flavor and the lighting and the just where people are. And in this one, it just feels like they're always in the same kind of brown and beige kind of areas. And I find it very difficult to kind of keep my mind on what's going on. But, I've seen it twice now. And between those two viewings, I think I have a pretty good handle on what the thing's about. I like this film okay, but I wouldn't say that I love this film. I think it's definitely not one that I will put on again, or even, I don't think I'd even recommend this one to anybody. But I, like I said, I don't hate it. I think I'm happy that I watched it. And there is definitely some stuff in this film that is cool. It's got one of my favorite torture devices featured, which is the pear of anguish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But I mean, that's not a very in-depth critique of Benedetta. I just
other than just like being in the castle. I mean, it's interesting because your criticism of Benedetta was one of my criticisms of Death Becomes Her. I just felt like the entire movie was in. It just felt like the entire movie was in a big mansion, and it's sort of like we're in one mansion, and then we move to another one, and they both look exactly the same. And it just felt like we're just stuck in this mansion with these annoying people for 2 hours.
Yeah, I guess so.
But I didn't really get the sense, like I wasn't, like it wasn't even something that occurred to me that like, oh, I wish we could get out of this castle or whatever, nunnery or whatever the fuck they're in. I just sort of, I was invested in the story and what was going on. So yeah, it never I mean, I guess if I was going to critique the look of it, it does kind of have a, like, it doesn't feel like it feels like I'm watching an episode of Xena, Warrior Princess, or like one of those television shows from the 90s. Like, it's just, it doesn't feel like I'm watching a movie sometimes. In the same way, you know, I mentioned to you The Name of the Rose, which feels very cinematic, and I feel like that movie feels more comparable to this movie. Maybe not as... That movie feels more realistic even than this movie. This movie feels like the people are almost too clean.
Yeah. I felt that as well. Like the costumes and stuff.
So that would be like like sometimes I feel like, oh, this looks like they just grab people out of a Renaissance fair, you know, but even that didn't really impede my enjoyment of the film.
Well, let's talk about what the film's about. So the film starts off and there's like a young girl who is, you know, very, like, I don't know, for lack of a better word, like sort of indoctrinated with you know, sort of Catholicism. I guess this probably takes place in, you know, what, the 16th century, something like that?
Maybe, yeah, maybe, I guess.
Okay.
I don't know. They never really say.
Yeah. Is it based on a true story? Like the sort of...
There's a little blurb at the beginning that says it is somewhat loosely based on a true story, and then at the end of the film it gives you like further information of the woman.
A little epilogue about her fate afterwards, which does lead one to believe that it is a true story, based on a true story.
But it sounds like the parents are giving their daughter over to the church for... I'm trying to remember the reason. There was some reason why they're handing their daughter basically over to the church. And she's about like probably 7, maybe.
Something
And as they're taking her to the convent, they run into a couple bad dudes, and she says some prayers and stuff, and it causes a bird to shit in one of the guys' faces. So right from the start, there is this. He creates the idea of like, does this girl have powers or doesn't she? Like that question is put into our brains. So yeah, she's taken to the convent, and what's the name of the woman who's the head abbess?
You mean the actress? Oh, yeah, it's
Charlotte Rampling.
Yeah.
So Charlotte Rampling from Zardoz is the abbess, and she seems very like practical and businesslike. She's not seemingly swept up in the fantasy of religion. She's just kind of taking this kid in. The dad has to pay a certain, like it's almost just like a private school. Like he has to pay like a certain fee every year to allow her to.
It's like a dowry almost. Like
right, because she's going to be a bride of Christ, so you have to pay this dowry every year. And her parents are rich, so they're going to pay it.
Hold on a second. Yeah, it should be Christ that has to pay the dowry, because you pay the dowry to the parents of the bride.
In reality, that would be true, but here Christ is poor, so he doesn't have any money. You have to treat him. You have to treat him like a bitch. Christ is a bum.
Christ needs a dowry. Christ has a hope chest.
If my daughter brought home Christ, I'd fucking kick him right out of here. I'm not going to let my daughter date a bum like Christ.
You'd make him give you a blowjob.
Yeah, I want a blowjob from Christ.
Oh man, that'd be so fucking sick.
Can you imagine? That might be the greatest blowjob of all time.
Yeah, he would fill his mouth with Arab oils.
You just wanted to say Arab oils again to get that to be a running a running thing.
A running
in
gag.
The podcasts.
Our little girl Benedetta is wanting to pray to the Virgin Mary, and they've taken her little Virgin Mary statue. So she goes to like this statue kind of in a hallway, and the thing falls over onto her, but it doesn't crush her. It falls in such a way where she's trapped beneath it, but she's not harmed by it. And she starts sucking on its nipple. And then the other nuns find her and they're like, oh, damn, are you okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine. And it's like, so it's weird. Why did it fall? I don't know. And and then the question is kind of brought up in a very cursory way. Was this a miracle? And
well, again, like this is the second thing that happens that it seems like, oh, does she have some kind of powers, or is this just kind of just a fluke accident that isn't anything? And so she gets older. She becomes, the film checks back in like 18 years later. Yeah,
there's a jump in time. Let me say also, just like to Charlotte Rampling's character, I agree with what you're saying, but just to kind of like fortify it a bit, it's kind of like maybe in her youth she would have been more open to sort of the possibility of like miracles, or and maybe she had some more enthusiasm or passion towards being a bride of Christ, so to speak. But in her old age, in her sort of given her sort of role as an abbess, she takes it very much like how you put it. Like it's just her job, and it's shit happens. It's going to take a lot for her to consider something a miracle. She understands the reality of the situation, which is mostly just kind of keeping the money coming in. And
she's very cynical when it comes to particularly these types of religious visions, miracles. Like I think even she says something like when the statue falls on the girl, and one of the nuns is like, "Oh, is that a miracle?" And she says something, I can't remember the exact line, but it was something to the effect of like, miracles are kind of, they make trouble.
Yeah. Or something kind of like, I don't know, it's gonna take a lot more than that just, for me to think.
So yeah, she's just very cynical. And yeah, maybe there was a time where maybe she was more open-minded about that stuff, but she seems like somebody who's probably seen it all. This probably isn't the first nun that has come into the convent that pretended to, have some sort of mystical experience.
Yeah, a nun that brings like a fucking I don't know, like what kind of sort of cheap magic trick, like a rubber knife or something like that. Uh-huh. I'm gonna have to cut this part out. Like you got to think of just sort of people back in that time trying to pull kind of a miracle scam, but really it's just
sure.
It's just
that was probably like a big happening back then, where people were constantly trying to elevate themselves by being a part of a miracle or claiming to see a miracle. It's like instant celebrity, instant power.
You could probably just juggle, and people would think it was a miracle.
Piss into your own mouth.
Yeah, just if you're a woman and you're able to piss into your own mouth, people would be kind of like, wow, that's a miracle, And then another guy would be sitting next to you, and he'd be like, oh yeah, watch this, and he'd shit into his own mouth, and everyone would be like, damn, it's the second coming of Christ.
Isn't there like a scene at the very beginning where a guy's like lighting his farts on stage?
There's a bunch of guys dressed as like skeletons, and they're just lighting their farts. And I rewound it, and I was like, Are they actually farting? And I think that what they have is like the torch has a little flamethrower on it. Like you can.
See.
I was thinking it'd be really
pull back the curtain on that.
Well, I just think it'd be funny if you had the thing facing the wrong direction and then you press the button and it just shoots a flame up your fucking small intestine or your large intestine. But anyways, yeah. So very very shortly after the jump in time, Benedetta is now played by what's her name? Virginia Efira or whatever her name is.
Yeah, I don't know. Some blonde lady.
Yeah, and she's very beautiful, actually. Like, you know, I think that when she did this movie, she was like, you know, in her very early 40s or late 30s. But you know, she's got a fucking nice face and a beautiful body. You know, I found myself admiring her physically. I found myself lasciviously leering at her.
So she's still seemingly having visions of Jesus Christ coming to her. She still seems like and again, like you can't, like, is she crazy? Is she actually having visions? You know, that's all kind of left up to interpretation. And then at some point, this other woman enters the convent. She's basically chased into the convent by her father, who seems to be a bit of he seems to be a bad guy who wants to, like, beat the shit out of her.
He's a jerk.
He seems like he's a jerk.
He's a real jerk.
But, you know, we don't really hear both sides of the story. So, you know, we don't really know what he had to go through raising her. So she might be a bit of a handful, you know?
Yeah, Johnny
but anyway,
blame the victim.
So anyway, she kind of throws herself on Benedetta. It's like, she's like, please, you know, take me into this convent. You know, I want to get away from my father, my family. And Charlotte Rampling agrees to do that because Benedetta's parents, for like some kind of like birthday gift or whatever, pay this poor girl's entrance into the convent. Mm-hmm. So Benedetta kind of takes her under her wing, and then it becomes, you can kind of see that there are sparks between them from the very beginning.
This woman, this young woman, Bartolomea is her name. She comes from, like, you can tell, like, because Benedetta is like from a rich family, she's kind of got a certain way of behaving that is sort of, I guess you could say, more civilized, refined. Whereas Bartolomea is, you know, she comes from like a place where she lives, you know, she sleeps like with the pigs, and she's raped by her father and brother, and everyone in her life is
brothers,
and everybody in her life is just kind of like messy and slovenly,
just like Vixen,
right? And you get the sense that, like, yeah, she's just kind of a lower kind of person than Benedetta. So when she enters the convent, she doesn't even know how to wipe her ass properly, and Benedetta has to show her how to wipe her ass with hay. But anyways, where I'm going with all of this is that when she's getting changed, it also shows that she hasn't been conditioned in terms of how she represses her own sexuality. Like Benedetta has been instilled with sort of some kind of, let's say, shame or you know, self-consciousness, whereas this girl doesn't at all, and she's happy to just kind of, you know, whatever, like run around naked, and she's happy to kind of like touch herself or sneak peeks at people changing. Like, she doesn't care. Like, she's just kind of, I guess you could say that she's more sexually free than Benedetta, but it ultimately is because of just not knowing any better. No one told her to kind of be shameful. She's just kind of this girl who just is like, whatever. Sometimes I finger my clit because it feels good. That's the way I take it.
She also basically initiates with Benedetta. Like, I think she's the first one to kind of, I mean, you could tell Benedetta's very intrigued by this girl, and Bartolomea can sense that, and she's kind of like the first one to act on it. I think she kind of like kisses her, or she like says something to her. I can't remember what, but she basically kind of initiates, like, hey, let's amp this up.
I don't know. I think it's the other way around. I think it's like, because I think that girl would be that way no matter what, and to anyone.
Isn't she the first one to kiss? She kisses Benedetta first, right?
Well, there's that part where there's that part where, okay, so this Bartolomea girl is, like I said before, just sort of naively promiscuous. Not promiscuous, but just kind of she's very comfortable being naked. She doesn't care. She doesn't understand kind of the significance of fingering herself or touching her tits or touching someone else's tits. Like, she's just kind of like more animalistic than the rest of these nuns in this convent. And I would argue that it's actually Benedetta who, sees this and actually initiates something. Like, she could very easily.
Well, I want to just, before you continue, you're saying that she's more immoral and animalistic, but like we do encounter at least two other nuns in the convent who talk about having been prostitutes.
Before or after?
Before being nuns. There was the one.
No. I mean before or after, like, this point in the film.
I can't remember. There was that one who kind of like has she's like cutting up her tits or something. She's like an older lady. I think they said she was Jewish, and she was talking about having been a prostitute. Sure. And then much later on, there was one of the older fat ladies was like, she was saying that she was a prostitute.
Sure. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, that doesn't really interfere with what I'm trying to say, because, like, God damn it, a father comes to the convent. My father, or my daughter's a goddamn whore, come in, like, marry her to God, and I want the rest of you nuns to beat the fucking whore out of her,
But I guess, like, the idea that, like, all the women in the convent are like these chaste virgins is not the case.
Well, I think that spending time in the convent is going to beat the whore out of you and give you the shame that you need to be a nun. But let's just say that Bartolomea is like a fledgling nun. Let's say, she comes into the convent and she still has the kind of the residual animal whorishness on her. Whereas,
there's also kind of like an aspect of, like, she's supposed to be very young, so there's still like that childish, she's living at home with her family, so there's like that kind of period where she's still very childish, but also like starting to become a woman and starting to starting to get horny. Yep.
There's that scene though where Benedetta calls her beautiful, and then she says, "Oh, you think I'm beautiful?" And then Benedetta says, "Yeah, you are." And she's like, "Well, I've never had a mirror." And she's like, "Well, look at yourself, regard yourself in my eyes." And then she's like, "Oh, I can't see you." She's like, "Well, come closer." And this scene to me shows, like, Benedetta's job as a nun should be to kind of like, like knock the animalisticness out of this girl.
Yeah, to curb that.
Yeah, but she doesn't. She encourages it, and because she's interested. Where the younger Bartolomea is kind of just, like, as you said already, like immature and kind of just figuring stuff out. Benedetta knows exactly kind of what the score is and what the deal is, and
well, I think like she
pursues this girl.
I think that her pursuit is because, you know, she's never had sex. She doesn't really know what sex is, but Bartolomea knows, and, you know, Benedetta might have those urges and she wants to be close to this girl, but she probably doesn't really know necessarily like, or really understand what that means. Whereas I feel like, you know, Bartolomea knows exactly what that means. Like, she knows what it means to be physical in a way that Benedetta doesn't.
Well, let's just say we can say, I think, in agreement that like the relationship that they strike up doesn't feel lopsided. It doesn't feel like one's taking advantage of the other. It feels like they both kind of come into it and they're both totally
right. She's not grooming.
Yeah.
Benedetta's not grooming Bartolomea, even though she probably is the older one of the two.
Right.
They both seem like they're perfectly. I mean, it seems like this is a love affair that's blossoming.
Yeah.
It's not. It's definitely not like, oh, I'm going to take advantage of this young girl. Because in some ways, like I said, in some ways, Benedetta is completely innocent of life, and, you know, and then in other ways, Bartolomea is innocent of other things.
Mm. So shortly after that, plot point is introduced of like this romance kind of bubbling under the surface. Benedetta has an illness, and during sort of like a fever dream, while she's drinking, I guess like poppy juice, she has a vision of Christ, and she touches his hands and his feet, and she takes off his robe, and his dick is tucked between his legs, or he doesn't have a dick or something. Can't remember exactly what that's supposed to mean.
It looks like it's tucked, but
so he's got his shit tucked way back, you know, kind of touching his butt cheeks, and she touches his hands. Next thing you know, she wakes up and she's got full on stigmata on her hands and her feet, and
side.
Oh, right, the part where the spear of. What's that called? The Spear of Destiny?
Spear of Longinus or something.
Right. The Spear of Long Vagina was thrust into the side of Christ, and like water or some, like, I don't know, Arab oils poured out of it.
I think Rockstar energy drink poured out of it.
Yeah, exactly. This is regarded as a miracle. This is taken by the rest of the nuns as like, oh, that's a miracle. So now she's... And even I think what happens at this point? Does Charlotte Rampling kind of?
I think she's still like kind of confused. She's still not 100% sure. I don't think she's fully on board ever. But I feel like she feels the need to move forward with the idea, because the whole convent is like, this is a miracle, like this is, you know. So I think like she brings in I can't remember the name of the guy's position, but she brings in this sort of like elder priest guy to come in and basically sort of like check out the situation to see like, is this real? Is this, you know, ask her questions and stuff.
She's also speaking in like a weird Evil Dead voice at this point.
Yeah, every once in a while she'll like slip into that kind of like exorcist voice. I
think that voice is a cue to the audience. Maybe not to the people who are actually in the film, like the characters in the film, but it's a cue to the audience that like, oh yeah, this is actually real. This is something supernatural happening. There's also kind of like this, but there is still doubt. There's a shard of pottery that is kind of discovered by one character, and it's kind of like, oh, she must have done this to create the stigmata.
Well, when they're interrogating her about her stigmata and stuff, because that's one of the things that Charlotte Rampling isn't buying. One of the clues is that, okay, she's got the stigmata on her hand, she's got it on her feet, she's got the gash in her side, but where's the scars on her head from the crown of thorns?
That's right.
That's missing. That's not there. So this is clearly fake. Yeah. And then so Benedetta leaves the room, and then all of a sudden she's screaming, and they're like, "What's wrong?" And then she's got blood pouring down her forehead, and so everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's a miracle!" But there's a couple people who, one of them being Charlotte Rampling's daughter, who is like, "This girl's a fraud."
Yeah.
And she's the one who finds that piece of pottery nearby where Benedetta claimed to have her forehead just spontaneously bleeding. So the abbess's daughter is kind of like, she goes to her mom. She's like, I think this girl's doing it to herself. I found this bloody piece of pottery. I think she's cutting her own head. You guys were just saying she's missing the scars on her head, and then she walks out of the room and now she has scars on her head. Come on, give me a break.
Yeah. And
her mother, the abbess, is kind of like, just roll with it. Don't say anything, because if you do, you're going to be fucked, and I'm not going to help you. So that creates sort of an interesting problem between the mother and the daughter.
Right. Well, the next thing you know, old Bartolomea takes that fucking wooden Virgin Mary statue and pulls out a knife and whittles it into a dildo. And they start.
Well, even before that, what's also interesting is because there's that contentious point where Benedetta clearly knows that she's falling for this girl. Mm-hmm. And I think she's starting to get and Bartolomea is kind of coming onto her. She's kissing her, and I think she doesn't know what to do, and she gets mad. And so when there's a scene when Bartolomea accidentally knocks some loom spools or something into
the hot water,
silk spools into boiling water, and everybody's like, oh, you ruined the spools, and Benedetta's like, you have to stick your hand in the hot water and pull the spools out of the boiling hot water as punishment. And so she does. So when the abbess comes and sort of what's going on here, what's happening, and Benedetta explains what was going on and why she did it, I think at that point Charlotte Rampling is kind of clued into that these two have some kind of, there's something going on between them.
Well, she basically admits to it. Benedetta admits it to Charlotte Rampling.
So she's like, there's something on. So instead of keeping them apart, it's interesting that she then basically has them room together.
Yeah.
Like she kind of puts them in the same little curtained off cubicle, hence sort of exacerbating the relationship as opposed to, like I said, keeping them apart, keeping them away from each other, curbing their affair.
And from that comes this Virgin Mary dildo. That's the result of this.
And so now they're kind of like roommates, and they come up with ways to have fun. One of them is the Virgin Mary dildo.
What do you think? What do you think? Charlotte Rampling's. What do you think? What purpose do you think she had? What was her plan of putting them together like that?
That's a good question. I'm not really 100% sure, other than maybe it had something to do with feeling like these two should get together. I mean, she has to think on some level of like, maybe, these two seem to have feelings for each other, so let them be together.
It's very progressive of her.
Maybe that was just something that was going on in that convent more than we know. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is very progressive. But again, like that goes towards her. Like she doesn't come across as like a strict conservative religious type. She's very, I wouldn't say progressive, but she's more interested in the kind of the business side of the convent, as opposed to being, swept up by the religious fantasy of it.
Right. Okay, so let's kind of turn on the jets here and get past the minutia of the film. Because we at this point there's a lot of just like like there's a part where they have sex through like a peephole. There's just a lot of kind of
they're having sex and somebody's spying on them through a peephole, and
right.
that's the peephole that Charlotte Rampling leaves. Like after the Crown of Thorns scar moment, Benedetta is elevated to the abbess of the convent.
Right.
Charlotte Rampling is knocked down, and now she's Sister Felicita.
Right.
So that's who she becomes. So she's the one looking in on them, because she's the one who purposefully opened the hole in the wall so she can spy on them.
Right. Right. I'm having. I'm gonna be transparent with you. I don't really remember this movie very well, even though I saw it last night.
See, that's why I don't understand where we're talking about it, and like just from talking about it, it sounds like a very interesting film. Like it's the fact that you can't get into it is surprising to me.
It just feels complicated and and it doesn't move. Like, I mean, you watch something like The Pit and the Pendulum, the Stuart Gordon one from 1991, I think, and it's kind of the same thing. It's sort of this like.
See, I just had that on before we started talking, and I probably watched like the first 45 minutes, and as fun as maybe The Pit and the Pendulum is, it's not in the same league as this film, as far as like story wise.
I guess so. I mean, I it depends on kind of what you're looking for,
and sort of complexity. Like it's not even comparable. Like even everything that I'm saying about like the relationships between those two girls and Charlotte Rampling and her daughter, like just those elements are far more complex than Lance Hendrickson and and how he's horny for that baker girl in the
but
bakery
he blames her for feeling horny. Like that's what I like about that film, is that he's like you fucking whore, you're making me horny.
I mean, it's just like Maniac though, right?
Yeah, like exactly what it is. But he unlike Maniac, he actually has limitless power. He's the Grand Inquisitor.
Maniac has some power.
No, he doesn't. Come on, give me a break. He's like the equivalent, like the way that it would be comparable would be like if Maniac was like the chief of police of New York.
It's just like. But I mean, he almost is. Like he runs rampant through the whole movie.
No, he isn't. He almost isn't.
Like without anything impeding him until the very end, and even that seems to be like a fantasy moment. Like it doesn't seem like he's really killed at the end. You
gotta admit that you're stretching. Being the Grand Inquisitor of the Spanish Inquisition is a lot different than being a rogue pervert maniac guy who likes to scalp women.
But I mean, I don't see why that is a significant difference. Both are arbitrarily killing people.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess like.
I mean, unless we're talking just like body count, like
no.
Like the Inquisitor probably has more, but
no, it has to do. Okay, it has to do with a couple things that are pretty obvious in my mind.
But I mean, I guess what my point is like the reasons are the same.
The reasons are the same. It has to do with like some sort of deeply rooted sexual dysfunction. In The Pit and the Pendulum, Lance Henriksen is like, he's so indoctrinated and kind of, demented by sort of the Bible, the church or whatever, that he's become this kind of guy, and he hates his own sexual desires because he can't seem to control them, and no matter how much he prays and no matter how much he uses like ligature and stuff, he can't seem to like stop his fucking dick from getting hard, or feeling kind of weird tinglies in his balls. But the thing that makes it different is that what he says, everybody else has to listen to. Like that's the difference, is that he has the power of commanding everybody. Everyone has to. He's the fucking the ruler essentially. He has a whole bunch of minions, and he can point stuff around. And also not only that, but also generally speaking, I'd say the majority of people think that what he's doing is good, or at least they pretend that it's good, because if they're afraid of what might happen to them if they say that he's if people say that he's not good. I mean, he's the fucking he's got the power of ruling, of authority. That's what I'm trying to say. He's got the power of authority, right. whereas the maniac does not. But
I mean, I don't see. I'm not really sure why that's important.
Why wouldn't it be?
No, I mean, like, why is that an important difference that needs to be pointed out? Like, why do you feel like that's sort of like a significant difference? Like, oh, this guy's in charge of, like he's in a position of authority. Maniac isn't.
Yeah.
But they're both maniacs, and they're both fairly successful at murder, but one just has more people to help him.
Well, it's the difference between like in one case, the case of the Pit and the Pendulum, the guy has the rule of law behind him. He can basically do whatever he wants, and whatever his whim happens to be, and brutalize and torture this poor girl, put her through whatever fucking shit he wants her to go through. Also do the same thing to her husband and anyone else for that matter. And he has the rule of law behind him. Like essentially in his world, he's not wrong, she's wrong. And
right.
Whereas in Maniac, it's pretty clear. Like, I mean, he is subverting the law. He's a killer, and he operates
Sure.
within a world that's against him. So Lance Henriksen is operating in a world that's entirely in support of him and his ideas, and the reverse is true for Maniac. So that's I guess why it matters to me.
It matters, but I'm still not like. But why? But I mean, you're sort of explaining the difference between the two, but I'm not really sure why that difference matters. That's what you're not explaining.
Well, why it matters in what regard? Like, I mean, in terms of the story?
I'm not sure. I totally lost track of what we're talking about.
Well, we're just talking. I mean, I guess we're just talking about like sort of, you think that the Benedetta. I'll give it to you that I think Benedetta is more of a complicated story. And
actually, like there is that. There's actually those moments in Benedetta too, like one that we just mentioned, where Benedetta forces the girl to fish the spools out of the boiling water.
Yeah.
It's clearly her, lashing out.
Right. I hate that you made me horny, you fucking bitch. Why are you making me horny for? Why are you ruining my relationship with God?
And then the equivalent to the Lance Henriksen character. His character in Pit and the Pendulum, the equivalent to that in Benedetta, shows up, and granted, I don't think he's as cartoony as the Lance Henriksen character, but he clearly has his own issues in that regard. Like he clearly has those same sort of like repressed feelings and lashing out due to the repressed feelings. I think it's all there too.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I'm just like, and actually that character's dealing with it in a lot. Like I think he does go to whores, and he does, indulge a lot more than Lance Henriksen. Like that character, whatever he is, what is his fucking role? Like he's an inquisitor or something.
He seems to be some sort of inquisitor,
or he's a cardinal, maybe. He's some sort of like higher ranking kind of guy at the church, a bishop, maybe. I don't know.
I can't remember. But that to me, like it feels more real. Like it feels like this is a real guy, as opposed to Lance Henriksen, who just seems like he's, like an evil,
like a cartoon
inquisitor monk that stepped out of the pages of like some pulp magazine.
Sure. No, I know what you're saying. There is sort of a effort being made in Benedetta to make it more sort of like fit in with history and not put sort of the horror pulp in the forefront.
But I mean, I feel like it does a good job of it does seem like it's trying to have that historical feeling to it, but at the same time, it clearly doesn't have a problem indulging with sexual violence and sort of like, stuff that would be relegated to more genre stuff, like older, 70s nunsploitation, Jess Franco stuff. Like there's, you see beheadings, you see lesbian love, dildo action. Uh-huh. It's all there.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I guess I'm trying to understand what this block is. It's keeping you from not paying attention.
I don't know. I just find it to like not a lot to be that consequential. Like, there's just
this is a podcast about movies. You can't say.
I'm trying to figure it out, man. And I just find like as things move along, just doesn't really feel like shit's ramping up as much as it should be. Like stakes aren't being piled upon stakes as they should be. Nobody seems like they're in that much danger until that fucking guy shows up. I guess that's it. I just kind of get snoozy until that guy shows up and he starts to dole out torturous punishment. There is a period of, I guess just like the romance between the two main characters, they don't, it begins and it goes and it, I guess I'm not sure how invested I am in it. Like, I'm not sure how in love they really seem. It doesn't seem like, I don't know. It just seems like they're fucking dildoing each other. They're just having. Well, fun.
I like the same way that like what is Benedetta up to? Are these real visions that she's having? Is she actually having these, divine miracles?
I'd say yes.
To her?
I'd say that Verhoeven is kind of making us. Verhoeven is I think explicitly leading us into believing that they are genuine.
But there's a reason why he's not just straight up saying they are happening. He's still leaving it somewhat, because at the end there is that moment where the Bartolomeo finds the shard and is sort of like, oh, you cut yourself. You cut the stigmata into your own hands.
Right.
So we could say, okay, everything that she's done has been fake. Or we could say maybe some of it's fake and some of it's real.
Sure.
Or we could say all of it's real. Maybe, maybe God came to her and told her to cut her hands. Like she was kind of implying that too. But we never see her do it. And so we're not 100% sure. And we're not sure like what her motivations are for doing this. And same thing with the sexual relationship between her and Bartolome. Like we're not sure like, okay, it seems like they have some sort of affection for each other, but Bartolomea, the way even she sort of is introduced into the film shows that like she's just somebody who's trying to, get out of a bad situation, an opportunist. Like I want to get away from my rapist dad and brothers, and I'm going to move into this convent. Oh, how do I climb up the ladder of this convent? Oh, I'll hook up with this chick and then we'll have a relationship. So, I mean, is that what her plan is? We don't know. She doesn't really say that, but it is a possibility.
I guess I don't really take her character as being that conniving. I find her to be more just going with.
There might, or maybe it's a little of column A and column B. Maybe she does sort of like maybe she is seriously attracted to Benedetta, but also maybe she is a little bit of a social climber. She kind of sees like, oh, I just hitched my wagon to Benedetta. I could take this all the way to the top. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, Verhoeven kind of like leaves a lot of these questions unresolved. Nobody's just coming out and saying, exactly what they're doing or what they're feeling. So I kind of like that about the film. I like that things are somewhat left up to interpretation. I think that's done on purpose.
I mean, I guess you're saying this, but I mean, at the same time, like, the use of that sort of like unearthly voice, just sort of I just really feel like a lot of these miracles are being displayed to us, the audience, as being genuine miracles,
But I mean, like, I feel like, okay, the unearthly voice, like that's what's interesting is like, he'll give us like, oh my God, she has the unearthly voice. Clearly she's possessed. But then we'll do the like, oh, you just cut your hands with this piece of glass. Well, I don't know, maybe. So he's mixing the fact that he's mixing like, oh, we're witnessing a miracle, and well, maybe she's actually trying to just get out of being in trouble here by cutting her hands. He's mixing those two together in a way that makes us question everything. Like it's sort of like, okay, one lie or like one sort of false act puts everything in question, right? Wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but then again, a lot of this stuff, I wonder who is it for? Is it for, like, finding the shards of pottery, for example? It's like, okay, is this for the audience to be like, oh, maybe she cut her hands, maybe she cut her face with the to show the fucking the scars from the crown of thorns. Maybe that's for us, for the audience, to be kind of like, oh, she's lying, or maybe it's just for the characters within the film to just to give them something to doubt, like, and us, the audience, are supposed to kind of be like, oh no, they're not going to believe that she actually is having some sort of divine thing happening, like. So it's less about kind of like, oh no, I don't know what, like, I as an audience member am not sure, and it's more just kind of like, oh no, this is just another sort of roadblock for Benedetta that's going to damage her credibility.
Ultimately, it is the question of the film. Like from the moment it starts happening, it's like, is this real or is she putting us on? from when she, the Virgin Mary statue falls on her, to when she first starts getting the stigmata, to when the first sort of priest comes in and interrogates her, and she cuts her forehead, or like something happens to her forehead starts bleeding. We don't see how it happens. And then when the abbess's daughter is sort of like seriously like, this lady's fake, she's faking it, and that ultimately leads to that girl's committing suicide. And the suicide then leads to Charlotte Rampling going to Florence to bring back that head inquisitor to come back to the convent to basically interrogate and then torture and condemn Benedetta and her.
Let's talk about that part, because that's where I start to perk up again. That's where I stop snoozing and I start to perk up and pay attention to this film, because like that part where he comes in and Benedetta washes his feet, and they have that little sort of predator and prey kind of talk. If I find out something here, and they're already torturing. This is while they're torturing Bartolomea and using the pair of silence, the pair of torment. My favorite, the only other film that I've seen that particular device used is in Mother of Tears, the terrible Dario Argento conclusion to the Three Mothers trilogy.
Oh yeah, I never saw that.
They use it on a woman's mouth very briefly. But anyways, so there's that whole thing, and then he finds like a tick on his leg and pops it, and they're kind of, it's like, oh, you're trying to seduce me by touching my feet like a whore. And then Benedetta's like, oh, how would you know what it feels like to be touched by a whore? And he's like, touche. And then the girl Bartolomea storms into the room, and then she is like, hey, look, we're hiding our dildo here, okay? And she opens up that fucking book, that Bible or whatever, and they've carved a place for it, kind of like in Hard Boiled, where the guy puts the gun in the book, and then but it's a dildo, a Virgin Mary dildo. Benedetta is going to get burnt at the stake, but and also Charlotte Rampling has got the plague, right? And then this guy is sort of overseeing the whole thing, but there's this big kind of like revolt, and then there's the scene where he dies. He's sort of shivved. Because
Benedetta also kind of like positions herself with the community around the convent.
Yeah.
If I get killed, if I die, your whole city is going to be wiped out by the plague.
Right.
And they believe it.
Right. And then she's like, oh yeah, I can tell the past and the present and the future. And then the guy on his last dying breath is like, oh yeah, so where am I going? Am I going to hell or to paradise? And she goes, you're going to paradise. And he's like, I knew you didn't know anything,
he says something like, I knew you were a liar or something.
Yeah,
like he calls her out for like, oh, you're still lying.
Right. So not you don't know anything, but you're a liar, which is pretty striking, because it shows that, like, when he's about to die, he's going to just reveal how much guilt he has in himself. Like, yeah, I know I was doing these things and I knew they were bad the whole time. So I like that. Right. That's that
was great. Great scene.
That is great. So yeah, there are good stuff. But I mean, that part in The Pit and the Pendulum where the old lady is getting burnt at the stake, and her cart gets kind of parked next to a cannon, and there's just a big thing of just open gunpowder, and she starts to just eat handfuls of gunpowder, so that when she gets burnt at the stake, she gives like a speech like, I'm a witch and I'm cursing this entire village, and then she explodes like a bomb because she's full of gunpowder, and it spooks everybody. That's also pretty fucking awesome too, and pretty clever, creative.
Sure.
So I mean, I don't know. I think that this is just.
But I think that we're talking about like two completely different
They are.
types of films.
They are. They definitely are.
Like I said, I feel like Benedetta's more in line with In the Name of the Rose.
Yeah.
Than Pit and the Pendulum.
Sure.
Pit and the Pendulum feels more just kind of like a B, medieval exploitation.
Yeah, sure.
Movie.
The only reason why I bring it up is just because being a Stuart Gordon movie, there is a strong emphasis on like sort of sexual dysfunction being at the heart of the cruelty, sexual dysfunction being at the heart of the evil, and that is pervasive throughout both, and that they have similar kind of settings, and there's like torture rooms, and there's sort of innocent. Well, let me put it this way: there's like female characters that are kind of thought to be having sort of supernatural kind of things kind of happening around them, and they're being kind of prosecuted, or like what's the word I'm trying to say? They're being kind of like attacked and imprisoned, and they're going through all kinds of hardships because they people are being like, oh, she's a witch, or she's fucked up, or she's impure, or she's doing something fucked up, and meanwhile this woman's just like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just being me over here, just trying to live my life. She's like,
it's me o'clock.
She's like Phyllis Diller. She's like, I'm sorry. But
that's the other thing. Like, there's so much in the film. There's like so many. Like, it doesn't like they make no attempt to even act like they're living in the Middle Ages. Like they all just sound like they're from like New York.
Right.
In the 90s.
That's something that's pretty well. I mean, Benedetta has a big advantage over that, but being in French, we don't have any way to clock their accents, or to clock sort of. We were just kind of like, okay, well, they're speaking French. Check authentic,
I think there's certain like they not just like their accents, like they say there's certain turns of phrase.
Sure.
That like, hey, I'm walking over here, or like stuff like that is clearly they were not saying these things back then.
Yeah.
Or at least it feel like they're using turns of phrase that are very modern that makes you feel like, oh, they're not even like really trying that hard.
Yeah, it's true. Like, I mean, like, hey, Torcanata, let's go get some pizza. But I don't know, whatever. I understand. I mean, if you say to me, I don't even feel like they're on the same level, I get that. I do. I mean, it makes sense to me. But for me to like, or for you not to understand how like those two characters of that whatever, that fucking the Inquisitor characters, the guy who's played by the guy from The Matrix, the guy who plays the Merovingian in The Matrix. I forget the actor's name. But that guy and Lance Hendrickson, like, for you not to see how they're similar is, come on, they are.
They're playing the same type of character, but one is sort of the cartoon version of it, and one is more of a realistic version, I guess, of it. And
also now that I think about, now that I fucking put my foot in it, we weren't even arguing about whether or not they were the same. We were arguing about Joe Spinell and Lance Hendrickson and Maniac and Pit and the Pendulum, respectively, and how they and how I think that they're totally different, and you think that they're the same.
And then also conversely, Maniac, I feel, is more successful in what it is doing than Pit and the Pendulum. So I'm not 100% sure why. Like, clearly, just because we have somebody in Pit and the Pendulum with power in a power position and he's doing these kind of murderous deeds doesn't automatically make him scarier or more interesting or more compelling, because Joe Spinell, his character in Maniac, is still far more interesting and compelling than the Lance Hendrickson character.
I mean, that's up for debate, because they really are trying to do different things. And like, we're not, the story of, Maniacs is a character study of this character. So we definitely get a lot more depth into this character. We're juggling characters with Pit and the Pendulum, and the focus isn't on Lance Hendrickson nearly as much. And also the point isn't for there to be an amassing of a body count, probably if you boiled it down, Lance Hendrickson's character would have killed like leagues more people off screen, before he showed up in the story that we're seeing him in. But that's not the point. The point is just kind of like, and it's not, the point isn't even who's scarier. The point is just kind of like, who are these people, and like, what are they doing, and why are they doing it? And like the point of the point, I guess, I do think that the idea, I do think that the idea of Torquemada, or like Lance Hendrickson's character in The Pit and the Pendulum, is more disturbing to me, because this guy is horny for this girl, and that makes him want to makes him want to like torture her, put her on the rack, cut out her tongue, do all kinds of horrible things to the people that she loves. And she's like, I'll do whatever you want. And what he's saying is, okay, fine, stop making me horny. And she's like, I don't know how to fucking do that. Like it's sort of this weird impossibility. And I don't know how to stop being like a sex object to you, And I saw the Pit and the Pendulum, fairly, like when I was like maybe 14 or 15. And I remember that idea being kind of like, damn, what would you do if
if somebody told you stop making me horny, what would you do?
If someone said to you like, hey, stop, you're fucking doing something and I don't like it, stop doing it, and it's actually impossible for you to do anything about it, and it's like, you better fucking stop, and I'm just, I don't know what to do, man. I'm over here. I'm sorry that I'm making you horny, and then he starts doing fucked up shit, like cutting out your tongue.
But isn't that like all of like your whole life? There's like, you're hanging around people who are just like, they just look at you and they hate your guts, and they're just like, stop being you. I can't. Okay, well, I'm gonna punch you in the fucking face. I mean, that's like, no, that's like 4th grade through 12th grade.
Not to me, man. I didn't suffer. I didn't suffer like you did.
You were the tough guy in school. Okay.
I wasn't the tough guy. I just knew how to get along with people.
Okay.
I was pretty well liked. I definitely was like an unusual child, but for some reason, I seemed to get along with everybody. I didn't have any enemies. Did you have a lot of enemies growing up? People were fucking with you, giving you wedgies?
I mean, there was definitely times where I'd get fucked with, but it wasn't. It wasn't like a huge part of my life, but every once in a while there'd be somebody who'd want to fuck with you.
Johnny, and I think like there was, stop being you.
I think there was sometimes where people would sort of look at me and think I was something other than I was.
These guys are queer.
Yeah, and they would be like, "Hey, come over here and suck me off."
Stop making me horny.
And I was just like, I can't help being so sexy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they wouldn't stop. So
there you go.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. I feel you. Benedetta. I don't know what it is, man. I think I did kind of say it at one point, just saying that there's a large part of this movie that just feels kind of like it's just, there's this sort of sexual thing going on, and kind of people talking about stuff and people whispering, and it's all very it doesn't seem very consequential. It doesn't seem like it's building towards anything for like a long time, and then finally the fucking that guy shows up, and then we start seeing some action being taken. I mean, it's typical, like you have a movie full of women and they're just gonna fucking be messing around and kind of going in circles, and all of a sudden you have to bring in a man to add a little bit of structure to the situation and actually get things moving. So I mean, and that's true. Maybe Paul Verhoeven in his wisdom, that's what he's saying in this film. You know, he's saying, yeah, well, I'm going to make the movie kind of like tepid and blasé for a while it's only women.
Well, I feel like you've really missed the mark on this. It's a great film. I would give it 4 eggplants. It's great.
I would give it 3, but at the same time, I don't know who I'd even recommend this to. I don't know anybody who would like this, to be honest. So I'm taking it down to a 2.5.
Me, I like it.
That's true. Well, you've already given it a 4. I say Benedetta gets a 2.5, which is a 50% on the scale, which is saying that I do. But
it's sort of like, I don't know who I could recommend it to, but I know I liked it. Me, I'm all that matters, and so I give it 4 eggplants.
Right. I tend to reserve half a point for wanting like the desire to recommend it to other people, like the desire to sort of like, I think this is good and I think this should be out in the world more. So I mean, that's what it's about. It's not so much like, oh, I care what other people think. Like I don't. I personally didn't think this film was that great. There's a lot, but here's the thing: is that there's a lot of great stuff going on in it. A lot of the early stuff, like some of those visions with Jesus, are very entertaining. I do like the characters. I love the lead. I love Benedetta herself.
It's funny how you keep like talking about like you like this, but then you don't like the film.
It doesn't come. Well, I mean, like no, it's not. Like think of something like Love Liza, right? Like Love Liza is full of great stuff and full of lots of laughs and lots of like hilarious performances and characters and little relationships going on. But it kind of just doesn't come together for you. For me, it does, but for you, it doesn't. And that's why that's why I felt you rated it low, because it didn't, as a film as a whole, it doesn't gel together enough. That's the way I feel about Benedetta. There's a lot of great stuff going on, but for me, it's a hard watch. It's hard for me. My eyelids.
It's a nice watch. It's a great watch.
My eyelids get real heavy when I watch Benedetta, and I start falling asleep. But at the same time,
during the nude scenes.
I fall asleep and I dream up my own homosexual. Yeah, exactly. my own homosexual fantasies.
I can't look at this movie filled with nude women. I have to just sleep and dream of Timothy Chalamet.
Dream of Timothy Chalamet and the guy from Honora 69ing. Yeah, but anyways, that's pretty good. I think we covered that pretty well. I mean, yeah. Sorry, you guys. I mean, sorry, listeners. Like, I know that you guys probably wanted to hear us talk about, Total Recall or some shit, or even L. But instead we talked about Benedetta and whatever. Like, yeah, Johnny says go see it, so I guess go see it. I say, whatever. If you have some time, go ahead and watch Benedetta. You could do a lot worse, but it's not. For me, it's not one of Verhoeven's best films. Would you say that this is one of Verhoeven's best films?
Yeah, I would. I would say it was one of his best films.
What do you think Verhoeven's best film of all is?
Oh, that's hard.
It's tough, right?
It is tough. He's a consistent, like, even stuff that isn't great, it's still interesting.
Well, how about this?
I've seen Soldier of Orange, and it was okay. I liked it, but it wasn't as good as, say, like Flesh and Blood. Yeah, Spedders is great. It might be like my all-time favorite, like, teen film. Yeah.
It's definitely up there for me. Like, if I were rating Spedders, that's definitely a 4 for me.
Like, if you were going to ask me, would you rather rewatch Total Recall or Spedders? I'd rather watch Spedders.
The only reason why I would say yes to Spedders is because I've seen Total Recall like so many fucking times, and I know it. I don't need to watch it again. So I would. And I'm
not even saying that because I don't like Total Recall. Total Recall is good, but Spedders is like, I don't know. There's something very unique about it, and the tone of it. It's great. Flesh and Blood is great. RoboCop, great. Total Recall, great. Basic Instinct is okay. What about Starship Troopers? Starship Troopers is great.
Yeah.
Black Book I thought was good. Benedetta I thought was great. And just like to be at his age and to have been making movies all this time and to, come out in his, twilight years with something like this, it's really inspiring. It's great.
Yeah, sure. That actually does matter. Like he is a very old man, and making something as what's the word? Making something as kind of like what's the word? Just kind of kind of alive like this, like and original and kind of ballsy like this, like Benedetta is. You wouldn't expect this from a guy of Paul Verhoeven's age, which I believe is like damn near 80, if not 80 already. So props to that. But yeah, it's like in terms of like I'd rather watch Showgirls than Benedetta myself.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah. But I mean,
this is far more intelligent than Showgirls.
Right. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, or I'm not gonna lie and say that I disagree with you. I still think that I don't know, man. Maybe it's just fucking blind nostalgia talking, but I prefer something like The Pit and the Pendulum over Benedetta, and I think that
it's a poor decision. Did you ever see In the Name of the Rose? Like I keep mentioning it and you don't say anything.
Oh no, I never. That's with Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I never saw it.
It's worth seeing.
Okay, I'll check out that. In the meantime, you should watch Elle. That seems like we got to get to the bottom of this fucking sort of like late stage Verhoeven kind of thing. So
like In the Name of the Rose is like there's a lot of similarity to Benedetta, but it's like the production value, the look, the characters in it. It's a great film.
Do you ever? I always would watch, like in Canada on cable TV. They would always show late at night. Very often they would show Jabberwocky. I think that's the Terry Gilliam film.
Yeah.
And I always would be disturbed by his vision of the Dark Ages, and for maybe I'm just looking at it through rose-colored glasses, but I've never seen those times depicted better. Like I always like the look of Jabberwocky for the Middle Ages.
Good. If you really want a film that has, I think, I don't know, it might be like the best sort of movie about the Middle Ages. Actually, it's kind of weird because it's like it's about the Middle Ages but on another planet. So it's like scientists from Earth discover this planet and the planet is stuck in the Middle Ages, so they send scientists to kind of boost this alien culture into a renaissance. It's called Hard to Be a God.
Oh, I know that movie.
It's like 3 or 4 hours long. It's not an easy movie.
Yeah.
It's actually, like most of the time I have no idea what's going on, but whatever's going on is like, it looks fucking incredible. Like it looks, it's great.
Yeah.
I don't know but it's like, I don't know if I should recommend it because it's not an easy watch. But if you're willing to, pry your eyes open and sit and watch it, really kind of you have to like make an effort, I feel like, with this film.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's in Russian as well.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at it right now. It's not that long. It's only 177 minutes long. It's 2 hours and change. It's not quite 3 hours. Wait, hold on. 177. Yeah. Okay. So it's just about 3 hours. But I've heard about this before. It's fairly recent, like 2013.
It took the guy like 15 years to make it, and then he died before it came out.
Oh, well, I don't know. I still might not watch it, despite that.
Gotcha.
Anyways, yeah. Hard to Be a God. There's also another movie called Hard to Be a God from 1989. I wonder if it's connected in any way. Doesn't look